Hi everyone, my name is Laura Keegan and today we'll be learning more about the violin. I've been playing the violin for over 13 years now and I'm excited for you all to learn more about this beautiful instrument. So as you know, I handed out a worksheet last week about tuning the violin with an electronic tuner, and today I'm just going to go over some more violin basics. And we have a great website that we're looking at today called violinonline.com. And so we'll actually only be covering a couple of these links in this tab, Violin Basics. I implore you all to explore the website further after this screen capture, but for the time being we'll only be focusing on the structure of the violin and bow, as well as violin instrument care. So hopefully by the end of this, our objectives are that you understand the structure of the violin as well as the bow, and I'll be going over a couple of diagrams so you can see that visually. And then we'll be going over some care and maintenance just to make sure that sound continues to stay beautiful as long as you take care of your violin. Alright, so we're going to start off with the violin and bow structure. I really like this website because it labels all the different parts of the violin, the bow, and we'll talk about these two little guys down here in a second. So the violin structure is actually really great. There was a lot of artistry that went into creating the violin, and I would love to have met the person who first invented the violin because this seems very complicated to me and it makes a beautiful sound. So at the top here you have a scroll, and it looks like a rose to me because it looks all scrolled up just like a rose and rose petals look like. And then you have your pegs, which I had labeled for you all on your handout last week, and those pegs correspond to each respective string. So this is the A string peg, this is the E string peg, this is the G string peg, and this is the D string peg. And each of those corresponds to each of the strings for you to tune. And like I said in the handout, you can use an electronic tuner. There are other ways to tune your violin which are on this website, so by all means please feel free to look at those. Alright, so down here you have a rib, and that's just similar to the human body. The human body has ribs on the sides and the violin has ribs on the sides. So these are oftentimes marked with horizontal lines, that's just how the wood tends to flow. And then down here you have the F hole, which looks like a backward S. And actually the violin is a hollow instrument, so inside here you see that black, that's because it's inside the instrument and there's nothing in between this piece of wood and the back piece of wood. So it's just empty air, and that just allows the sound to flow out better. And this is the bridge here, and that's very important with making the sound of the violin like it is. Without the bridge and without a lot of these components, the violin would not sound the same. Then down here you have the tuner, and a lot of violins have an E tuner, and that's just to fine tune that really small string just a little further, because even if you use an electronic tuner and you use the E string peg up here, sometimes that's not enough and you want to make it a little bit closer to the actual pitch you're looking for. And then down here you have the tailpiece where the tuner lies, and the tailpiece connects to the chin rest, where your chin will rest right here just like it says, and your violin will then stretch outwards after your chin is here, and hopefully you'll be able to get a violin that corresponds to the correct shoulder, whether you are right-handed or left-handed. Next you have the bow, and there's a tip up here, this stick down here, which is actually called that. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. And then you have hair all here. That is actually made out of horsehair. It's very cool to feel, but I'll explain this in the next section and our next objective to learn more about maintenance. You should not be touching that with your fingers due to the oils on your hand. It can actually damage it. But then you have the frog down here, which usually has a circle just lying on there. and you have the tension screw last. So this tension screw can be turned left or right, or clockwise or counterclockwise, and that helps to tighten this bow hair. And I'll explain more about that in our next section. And then lastly, down here you have your shoulder rest. A lot of people wear their shoulder rests differently, and as long as you're properly holding your violin and playing your violin, you can have your shoulder rest however you would like, however is most comfortable for you. And then down here is the last part, and that's rosin. So rosin is used to help make this bow hair less slippery on the strings. That's really important because you want to get the best sound you possibly can out of your violin. And you're not going to get that with just these slick hairs just right on the strings. You want to make sure that you have some friction and tension applied, and that will help bring out a really robust sound. Okay, now that we've covered the structure, let's just talk about some violin instrument care. So, one of the biggest things with violin instrument care is making sure that you tighten your bow before playing and by gently turning the tension screw. And you don't want to make the bow hair too taut, because then that could actually make some of the hair snap, and you don't want that because you'll have to get your bow rehaired eventually. And whenever you do handle your violin bow, like I was saying, try not to touch the bow hairs with your fingers or hand. Your bow hairs will actually last a lot longer, and so will your strings as a result, if you do not touch the bow hairs. Then another important part is putting a small amount of rosin on, not too much. You want some friction added in order to produce a sound that is more robust and strong. Rosin helps to do that. But you do not want to put too much on there because, again, your bow hairs will actually last longer if you use it in moderation. And then, after playing the violin, gently clean it with a soft, clean, lint-free cloth. I've always done that, and it gets off the excess rosin that comes off from your bow, exiting those strings and pulling across them, because some of that white powder from the rosin ends up beneath the strings, and you want to make sure that your violin is clean next time you use it, and your wood will actually be in better shape because of that reason. Polish really is rarely needed. I have always had my violin polished whenever I bring it to the violin store. Whenever I'm getting my bow rehaired or my violin restrung, they actually polish it for me oftentimes. And then when you're not using your violin and bow, please always place them in your case. You never want to have your violin or bow sitting on a chair or sitting on a table, because someone could easily come by and just kind of whack them off the chair or the table by accident, especially if you have pets like I do. You don't want a chance your violin or bow getting hurt or damaged by falling or getting bumped. So always place them in your case. And with that, if you use a shoulder rest or shoulder pad, always remove it from your violin so that your violin can be placed in to the case properly. Loosen your hair on your bow before putting it back in the case, just so that your bow hair can last much longer. Make sure you have securely closed your instrument case with any zippers and latches before picking up your instrument case. Just like you wouldn't want to have luggage that was unzipped walking through the airport and potentially losing all of your clothes along your path to get to your gate, you don't want to have your violin case open with any zippers. Even if you have one zipper and not the other zipped up, that still is a safety hazard for your violin. And then do not store your violin in extremely cold or hot locations. I would never store my violin in my car, even if it was a cooler day, because you still never know if the temperature or the sun coming into the car is going to damage your violin. And if you live in a dry climate, you may want to consider using a humidifier. I know that I use a humidifier, and I don't even live in a very dry climate. It just helps to balance out the climate in your case, because excessive dryness can actually cause cracking, excuse me, or the seams of your violin to open. And if your violin ever has cracks or the seams begin to open, please take it to the music store. violin maker or just have it professionally repaired. Please never try to fix your violin on your own. Even if you think it's a simple fix, you trying that simple fix may make something else a little bit worse on your violin. So just make sure that you are always bringing it to a professional whenever you have trouble. So that concludes our screen capture for today. Today we went over the violin and the bow structure, as well as violin instrument care, as well as a few coughs of mine throughout that because I'm sick and I apologize for that. But I definitely would love for you all to look at this website further so you can learn more if you're interested, and I hope you all have a great rest of your night. Thank you.